Good afternoon, Mets fans, and welcome to a Monday edition of Driving with Mr. Met. It's been a few days since my last recording, and wow, a lot has happened since last week. On the field, what can we say? The Mets have lost 4 out of their last 5 games, dropping 2 over the weekend in Seattle after losing the previous 2 in San Diego. And you know, the funny part is who would have thought that the Mets were going to win the Montero start and lose the DeGrom and Lugo starts? That just doesn't seem to make any sense. Seems to defy logic. But much like 2017 as a whole, this entire season defies logic. So why shouldn't the last 5 games defy logic? So on the field, not going to talk about too much, but off the field, trade deadline being today, the Mets have made a few moves, and I'm going to talk about them today. So the first move was a surprise, I think, to a lot of us Mets fans and to AJ Ramos himself. The Mets make a trade within the division with the Marlins, trading away 2 prospects for AJ Ramos. Prior to that, AJ Ramos, by the way, the closer for the Marlins, will more than likely fill in as the closer for the Mets for the remainder of the season, because we'll get to the reason for that in a second. Prior to the Ramos deal, though, the Mets made a non-surprising trade. They were able to move Lucas Duda for a couple of pitching prospects. Duda goes to Tampa Bay, where he will be probably better utilized as a designated hitter. The other transaction that ties in with that is Curtis Granderson was successfully able to barter the exchange of the We Follow Lucas Duda Instagram account, which, if nothing else, at least we get to continue to see the quiet monster in Duda on that account. I'm going to miss Duda, but it made no sense whatsoever for the Mets not to deal him. And frankly, anything they get back was going to be a bonus because, the Mets had to trade him. There was just no keeping Duda. He's a free agent, and with Dom Smith being on the cusp and more than likely here soon, again, it made no sense not to deal Duda. So we're going to miss Lucas. We're going to be glad about the fact that he spent the majority of his career up to this point with the Mets and is currently the number 1 home run hitter in Citi Field. He'll probably hold on to that for a good amount of time before the Mets can develop some young talent who can overtake Duda's home run record in the new park. That also removed the longest tenured Met from the roster. Duda was the longest tenured Met, not including David Wright, who I'm not even sure what his status is. I don't know if he's on the 40-man. I don't know how that all works, but David Wright, of course, is still the longest tenured Met, but the longest tenured active Met was Lucas Duda. He handed that mantle off to Josh Edgin, who was unceremoniously DFA'd over the weekend. That was a big surprise. I don't know what that was about. The only thing I can think of is pretty much what Gary, Keith, and Ron mentioned yesterday, and what Howie and Josh mentioned on the radio as well, which was basically that there's going to be a trade to which Edgin is attached. That trade is yet to materialize, but it doesn't make any sense that the Mets would DFA Edgin to make room for AJ Ramos. Again, unless there was a roster move, a trade, a transaction attached to it. So, we have a couple of hours this afternoon to see what happens there. The other trade that did happen today, another one that I think we all saw coming, was the Addison Reed trade. And Addison Reed is on his way to Boston, where he will slot back in as a setup man for Craig Kimbrell there in Boston. In return, the Mets get 3 bullpen arms. I don't remember the names of any of these guys off the top of my head. I'm sorry about that, but I know one of them, at least according to Mets blog, is a guy who can be in the bullpen for the remainder of this year and for next year as well. So, that's a good sign that at least there's a live arm coming into the pen for this year. So Reed is on the move. The last piece that I think we all expected to be dealt was and is and remains Asdrubal Cabrera. And at this moment, it's a little bit after 1 o'clock on Monday as I record this. The latest news is that there's not a lot of interest or not a lot of movement surrounding moving Cabrera. So he may end up being with the team after the deadline ends today or tonight or whatever. But that's sort of a surprise. You know, there were a couple of teams who were interested. Cleveland was one of the names that was bounced around. Arizona is an interesting thought as well, but we'll have to wait and see what happens with Cabrera. The path for Dom Smith is now open, so I think that's pretty clear. Duda gone for the time being. The Mets will slot in Wilmer Flores at first base, possibly Jay Bruce as well. But the path for Dom Smith, it's now an absolute when, not an if, that Dom will be called up. The Ahmed Rosario situation is not quite as clear because if Asdrubal Cabrera remains on the roster, what do the Mets do to get Rosario up on the big league roster? Now, there is a chance that with Reyes being injured yesterday, being hit by a pitch, that he may end up on the disabled list, and that may open up a roster spot for Rosario. But again, it would be a temporary thing until Reyes comes back, provided that they can't move Cabrera. So a lot of moving pieces still around right now, and it'll be interesting to see what unfolds for the remainder of the day. I will come back tomorrow to provide a recap of whatever happens for the rest of the day and give some of my thoughts on it. As far as the moves that the Mets have made, I think they've made some smart moves. I think Sandy's done a pretty good job of retooling a little bit here, moving guys that needed to be moved. And, you know, there was some confusion about why Sandy and why the Mets went out and acquired Ramos. I think we saw today with the Reed trade that moving Ramos and getting him off the table added some value to Addison Reed, and it allows the Mets to net 3 prospects from the Red Sox. So that's a win. And again, I think the Duda trade is also a win. So 3 winning trades, in my opinion. I'm not really upset about any of these. I think the thing that shocks me the most, like I said, is the edge in DFA. But that's going to be a sort of a moving story over the next couple of hours. See what happens with that. In the midst of all of this on the field, I do want to mention that Michael Conforto is, since the All-Star break, playing like an MVP on both sides of the ball. He, over the weekend, made a couple of brilliant plays in left field, both with his glove and with his arm. Conforto has hit home runs. He's just been fantastic. I cannot wait to see Conforto ending up in a run-producing role in the lineup as opposed to as the leadoff hitter. It's a matter of time again before he moves out of the number 1 spot in the lineup and finds himself as the number 3 hitter where he belongs. So that'll be interesting to watch. And you know, as this season continues to unfold into a lost season, Michael Conforto's performance remains one of the bright spots of 2017. There aren't a lot of other ones to talk about, so I guess we'll have to look at that as a silver lining to this year. So that's all for today. I thank you guys, as always, for watching the video. If you're not already doing so, please follow me on Twitter at Mr_Met. And as always, let's go Mets.